Welcome to GCSE Biology Paper 1, Bioenergetics, Photosynthesis, Lesson 4. Top tips before we begin. This will help you to get the most out of today's lesson. The resources that you'll need for today, as always, mini whiteboard or a pen and paper, revision cards, and if you print them out, the resources from Show My Homework. If there's anything you need to get, can you pause and organise? Right, let's get started on retrieval practice. Here is the biology, pause and retrieve. Here are the answers to the biology questions. Can you mark your work and produce revision cards? Pause and revise. Here are the chemistry questions. Pause and retrieve. Here are the answers. Can you mark your work and produce revision cards? Pause and revise. Here are the physics questions. Pause and retrieve. Here are the answers to the physics questions. Can you mark your work and produce revision cards? Pause and revise. Here are the answers to the practice questions you did in the last lesson. Can you now pause and check? Here are the answers to the remaining 4 questions. Can you now mark your work, pause and check? Now that we've done that, let's get on to teacher instruction. On Show My Homework, you'll find the resources for this next section, but I've also got them here on the video, so let me show you them. If you need to print anything out, can you now pause and organise? In today's lesson, we are going to look at the importance of being able to interpret and explain photosynthesis graphs involving 2 or 3 factors, and then we're going to decide which factor is the limiting factor. So if we look at this first question, we've got a graph, and in this graph we've got a number of limiting factors. We've got light intensity, a bit like the graphs we had yesterday, but we've also got temperature. Okay, so we're looking at the effect of 2 different limiting factors, so light intensity and temperature. So what can we say about this graph? Well, if we look at the graph, first of all, at the start, both lines show that as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases, and it's increasing steadily. Okay, then the lines level off. Okay, so we can see the lines are leveling off. And they're leveling off because the light intensity is no longer the limiting factor. If you remember, when light intensity increases and the rate increases, it's the light intensity that is the limiting factor. We can also see that the line at 25 degrees Celsius levels off at a higher point than the 15 degrees Celsius. Now this shows that temperature must have been a limiting factor at 15 degrees. 2 things then. From the beginning up to this point, both lines show that as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis is increasing. So therefore light intensity is the limiting factor. But from here on, temperature is the limiting factor. Let's write that down. At the start, both lines show that As light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases. And as I've said, it increases steadily. So let's put that on. Steadily. Then the lines level off. Then the lines level off when light is no longer the limiting factor. Right, what else can we see? Well, the line at 25 degrees Celsius levels off at a higher point than the one at 15 degrees Celsius, showing temperature must have been a limiting factor at 15 degrees Celsius. Let's now look at the second question. And it says the following graph shows how the rate of photosynthesis is affected by two factors, light intensity and carbon dioxide concentration. So on our axis, we've got light intensity and we've got rate of photosynthesis. And also both lines, if you notice, they're both at 25 degrees Celsius, but the concentration of carbon dioxide has changed. Here we've got 0.04% carbon dioxide concentration, whereas here at the top line we've got 0.4% carbon dioxide. So what's happening here? Well, as before, at the start, both lines show that as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases steadily. Okay, so again, light is the limiting factor. The line levels off when the light is no longer the limiting factor. The line at 0.4% carbon dioxide levels off at a higher point than the one at 0.04% carbon dioxide. Now this is showing carbon dioxide concentration must have been the limiting factor at 0.04%. Okay, because the only thing that changes, apart from the light intensity, is the concentration of carbon dioxide. The temperature has stayed the same. Okay, so the temperature isn't the limiting factor. It's only the carbon dioxide concentration that's changed, and the more carbon dioxide, the faster the rate of photosynthesis. Let's write that down. At the start, both lines show as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases. Lines level off when light is no longer the limiting factor. The line at 0.4% carbon dioxide levels off at a higher point than the one at 0.04% carbon dioxide, showing carbon dioxide concentration must have been the limiting factor at 0.04% carbon dioxide. Let's note about temperature as well. The temperature is not the limiting factor because it is the same for both lines. And that is 25 degrees Celsius. Let's now look at the next question. Here is the next question. This is an exam question, so I'll read through it with you first of all, and then we'll look at what it's telling us. So, light intensity, temperature, and concentration of carbon dioxide are factors that affect the rate of photosynthesis. Scientists investigated the effects of these three factors on the rate of photosynthesis in tomato plants growing in a greenhouse. The graph below shows the scientists' results. So we've got a graph. On the graph, we've got light intensity at the bottom on the x-axis here. And each line has got a temperature and a carbon dioxide concentration. A farmer in the UK wants to grow tomatoes commercially in a greenhouse. The farmer read about the scientists' investigation. During the growing season for tomatoes in the UK, natural daylight has an intensity higher than 30,000 lux. So here's 30,000 lux on the graph. The farmer therefore decided to use the following conditions in his greenhouse during the day. 20 degrees Celsius, so that's our temperature, 0.1% carbon dioxide, so that's our carbon dioxide concentration, and no extra lighting. Suggest why the farmer decided to use these conditions for growing the tomatoes. You should use information from the scientist's graph in your answer. What we've got here then, I've got the graph. We know the conditions, so if I show those, so there is the light intensity, 30,000 lux. I've drawn a red line straight up, so we can see where it intersects the other lines, or three of the lines. And then these are the other conditions he wants to use. 20 degrees Celsius, 0.1% carbon dioxide, and as I said, 30,000 lux. So what sort of information is the examiner looking for? Well, first of all, it wants some reference to the fact that the farmer is out to make profit, okay, and he wants his commercial business to be cost effective. So we'd have to mention something along those lines. We can also see that raising the temperature to 25 degrees Celsius makes very little difference at 0.03% carbon dioxide. So if we look here, there is the rate of photosynthesis at 20 degrees Celsius. Here it is at 25 degrees Celsius. Okay, so very little difference at all. So let's write that down. We can also see that at 20 degrees Celsius, with carbon dioxide at 0.1%, the rate of photosynthesis increases. So it's a lot higher. So if we kept the temperature at 20 degrees Celsius and just raised the concentration of carbon dioxide, the rate of photosynthesis increases. So let's put that down. What we could also add, if you look closely, we can see that at 20 degrees Celsius with carbon dioxide at 0.1%, the rate of photosynthesis increases more than 3 times the rate at 20 degrees Celsius and 0.03% carbon dioxide. And we can see it's rising from about 5 arbitrary units to 17 arbitrary units. So let's write that down. Now, although 25 degrees Celsius gives a higher rate of photosynthesis, the negative of this is the cost of heating is not economical, because to raise the temperature from 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, it would cost money. Finally, as we can see, extra light does not increase the rate of photosynthesis. Daylight is 30,000 lux. So if you add extra light, you're not going to increase the rate of photosynthesis, because we can see we're in the leveling off portion of the graphs. On the exam paper, this would be a 4-mark question. As you can see, there are 6 bullet points, 6 things you could mention to get the marks, but remember it's a maximum of 4 marks. Can you now get the final instruction sheet on greenhouses? Let's look at this question now. So it says, limiting factors of photosynthesis reduce yields of crops and other economically important plants. Conditions can be set up in greenhouses and outside polytunnels to reduce the effect of limiting factors. And we've got a nice diagram of a greenhouse here. Now the question is, explain how commercial growers use their understanding of photosynthesis to maximize the growth of plants. If we look at this diagram, we've got lots of detail that can help us to answer this question. What I'll now do is go through each of the limiting factors in turn. Let's start with light intensity. We know that increasing the light intensity up to a point will increase the rate of photosynthesis and therefore will increase the growth of the plants. Increasing light intensity will increase the growth of plants. As we know, that's up to a point, up to the point where other limiting factors come into play. That's what we'll write. What do we know about greenhouses? Well, they're made of glass or some transparent polymer so that you get the maximum transmission of light. Okay, so the maximum amount of light is coming into the greenhouse. The glass will also trap the light energy. So let's write that down. So greenhouses made of glass or plastic for maximum transmission of light. Oops, transmission of light. Remember, the glass also traps the light energy. Just think of the greenhouse effect. The growers can also maximize the rate of photosynthesis by using artificial lights. If they use an artificial lighting system, that will provide the optimum light intensity and will also lengthen the day. A lot of commercial greenhouses have their artificial lighting system switched on during the night so that the plants can continue photosynthesizing and growing. They also usually have blinds to block the light out so it doesn't cause light pollution. Let's write that down. Can use artificial lighting system to provide optimum light intensity. And lengthen the growing day. So you could have the plants photosynthesizing 24/7 if they're given light 24/7. Let's now look at carbon dioxide. As you know, carbon dioxide is a raw material of photosynthesis. Increasing the concentration of carbon dioxide will increase the growth of the plants up to a point. Let's make a note of that. So, carbon dioxide is a raw material of photosynthesis. Increasing the carbon dioxide concentration will increase the growth of plants. Okay. And we know that's up to a point because it will eventually, the graph will level off depending on what the other limiting factors are. So how can we increase the carbon dioxide concentration? Let's have a look at that now. Well, there are a number of ways. Firstly, you can use a paraffin oil burner because as the fuel burns, carbon dioxide is released. That's usually done on a small commercial scale. On a larger commercial scale, growers use carbon dioxide waste gases from industrial processes. Okay. They also sometimes use liquid carbon dioxide, which enters the greenhouse via pipes. The problem with that, of course, is it's expensive. So let's just note those down. So to increase carbon dioxide concentration, you can do the following. So use paraffin burner, paraffin oil burner. As I said, that's on the small scale. Use carbon dioxide waste gases from industrial processes It's large scale. Use liquid carbon dioxide. That's applied through pipes. And again, that's large scale, but it's also expensive. Let's look at our third limiting factor now, temperature. So what do we know? We know that increasing temperature increases the rate of photosynthesis and therefore growth. But we also know if the temperature gets too high, enzymes will denature and growth will slow, or the plants will die because photosynthesis will stop. So let's note that down. Increasing temperature increases the rate of photosynthesis and growth. But too high temperature and the enzymes involved will denature. How can we increase the temperature? Well, again, we can use a paraffin oil burner because as well as producing carbon dioxide, it will produce heat, or we can use a heating system, have hot water pipes running through the greenhouses. So let's write that down. To increase temperature, use paraffin oil burners or use a heating system. Hot water pipes. Now we've said if the temperature gets too high, then the enzymes denature, photosynthesis will slow down, and growth will slow down. So we need to be able to decrease the temperature as well. To decrease the temperature, we can use an automatic ventilation system. So, to decrease temperature, we can use an automatic ventilation system. Basically, windows that will open and close automatically, controlled by a temperature sensor. So they are the three limiting factors that we have to look at: light intensity, carbon dioxide concentration, and temperature. Of course, the plants also need water, so commercial greenhouses usually use an automatic irrigation system, a watering system, to make sure the plants get the right amount of water. Because if they get too much water, then the plants could rot. So why is it important for these commercial growers to understand limiting factors? The main reason is profit. They are a business, they need to make money, so they need to know the correct conditions to grow their plants quickly enough to sell on. But they also want to keep their costs down, their running costs. So the cost of fuel, cost of electricity, cost of putting in new systems, okay, because all of those costs will negate from their profits. It will reduce their profits. So let's just make a quick note on that. Growers need to strike a balance between all the limiting factors to obtain the optimal growing conditions at an optimal cost. What I would like you to do now is embed your new knowledge. So can you now pause and embed? Let's now do some practice. As always, you'll be able to find the resources on Show My Homework, but if you're not printing them out, they're here. So that's the first question, the second question, the third question, and the fourth question. So if you need to, can you gather together the slop questions? Pause and organize. Can you now pause and practice? Do some slop. Here are the answers to today's slop. The answers to question 1. So can you pause and check? The answers to question 2. Pause and check. The answers to question 3. Pause and check. And finally, the answers to question 4. Can you pause and check? We have now completed bioenergetics photosynthesis. You are now going to do the ultimate retrieval so that you can practice again and embed the knowledge that you've gained from this topic. So here it is. Again, you can print this out from Show My Homework. The way I'd like you to complete this ultimate retrieval is any question where you definitely know the answer, can you mark in black? And any question where you're not sure of the answer and you need to look it up in your STB or in the notes you've made this week, can you do in red? By doing this, it will show you the questions that you definitely know the answers to and the questions that you may need to do a bit more work on. For instance, I know all these questions, but I don't know these ones. So straight away it stands out and shows me, gives me a visual representation of what I know and what I don't know yet, which means I need to focus on the I don't know yet questions a bit more until they're embedded. As I said, that's the end of the bioenergetics photosynthesis section. So until next time, take care, be kind to others, and don't forget, look after yourselves.